All right, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I am your Ice Dragon, Rayron VR. And we are officially at the first week complete with the National Model Railroad Month for November 2023 here on the channel. Hopefully you guys have find some interesting things to look at. I know it's very basic when it comes to the content, when it comes to model railroading. Obviously, we can get a lot more deeper into the weeds. But again, I'm just trying to showcase the hobby in 30 days. There's just so much to talk about. And so we're on to our next manufacturer slash distribution. And so we're going to be talking about Walthers. So after you buy your first Bachmann set or any sorts of train that you get that you start off with, you got to ask the question, how far can we go? And so that was always the case with me. It's like I always dreamed to have a nice railway with buildings and scenery and just other options to do. Obviously, Bachman can only go so far when it comes to the hobby. Well, if you were like me, um, I was always happy when I got one of these bad boys right here. So when you think about Walthers, gotta think about these catalogs. Now, the feeling when you got one of these catalogs was like a kid in a candy store, or when you got that Toys R Us catalog that you got in the mail for like Black Friday and Christmas. You would always highlight or circle or triple circle something that you really want from your parents, kind of a wish list. Well, as I was growing up, these were definitely those wish lists when it comes to the model railway. Now, I've always liked collecting these because one interesting thing about these catalogs is that you can kind of gauge on the health of the hobby as the years progress. Now, what's interesting about this is that the Walthers catalog used to be in two different books. You had an HO one independently, and then you had the N and Z scale. Now, something that I've noticed throughout the years is that they've actually combined all three scales into one book. And the book has slowly been getting thinner and thinner. Now, is that an accurate representation of the health of the hobby? It depends. And we'll actually talk about that in a later video when it comes to the health of the hobby. But it's definitely something to look at. But nevertheless, this is that book that you would typically want to grab and look at how far can we go? Kind of a wish list. What is out there so that way we can look at what we want to expand our layouts. Now, what's cool about this is that you had all sorts of manufacturers in these books because Walters is one of the main distributors when it comes to this hobby. So not only did they have Walters products, they also had like Bachmann, they had some European collections there with Tricks and Markland and all that. So it was nice to see all the manufacturers within this book. It was definitely the must-have when it comes to this hobby, and rightfully so. So when it comes to Walthers, they have a plethora of offerings. They've got their Cornerstone, they've got Scene Master, Walthers Tools, Mainline, Trainline, Walthers Proto, Walthers Track, Lifelike, and Walthers Control. So once upon a time ago, most of these, especially with Proto and Lifelike, they used to be their own companies. Lifelike was kind of the comparator to Bachmann when it comes to the entry level hobby. But they were bought by Walthers, and unfortunately, you don't see this in stores anymore because Lifelike was always correlated with Toys R Us. I always remember going to a Toys R Us and seeing the Lifelike sets, and it was such a cool thing to see. But yeah, those days are kind of gone. But at least we get to see it here in the Walthers catalog. Again, these are very cheap, plastically type of products. They can easily either snap together or glue together. Again, these are very entry level type of products that we're talking about here. Um, and see what else. So you've got Cornerstone. So if you really want to get into the next level of the hobby, and if you want to get a couple buildings, Cornerstone is usually the collection provided by Walthers that you can grab all sorts of buildings. Basically, imagination your endless imagination here. You're limited by your own imagination, and anything that you can think of, you can build it. And then don't be just limited by these buildings. There's something called kit bashing that you can create your own buildings if you want to create something prototypical. But that's a great thing about this hobby. This is where you really start to expand and start to see the sandbox element of the hobby truly shine. And again, this is just one kind of page that I'm just glancing through. There's just endless possibilities. I mean, you got bridges, you've got towns, you've got green facilities, crossings, roadways. Like, if you really want to dig into making a layout, you got it. One of the main places to go to is Walthers. So some other things to highlight. We've got kind of their train line offerings here, and this is basically kind of, again, their version of the entry level when it comes to the hobby. They got a lot of DC ready engines. Like, look at this, a standard DC for $76, not too bad in today's market, and a few other things as well. They've got their own kind of snap-track system. I've always preferred Bachmann snap-track system over Walthers, and it's probably the old lifelike system as well. But yeah, that it's pretty cool if you want to get into these type of things. So that's the main line. Or train line, excuse me. Main line is those that want to get a little bit more serious in a hobby. This is where you're going to see more of your DCC ready, or actually the cheaper DCC equipped. Like, look at this. We got a little switcher here with an ESU sound and a decoder in there for $160. That's actually not bad for the price. And then some other things as well. They've got passengers, detailed freight. But again, not bad when it comes to the hobby. If you really are going to get into the hobby, look at Bachmann first, but then also compare it to Walthers, because Walthers has some good deals for some really good products as well. So that is their main line. And then the Proto is a little bit more fancier line. This used to come from the old Proto 1000, Proto 2000s before Walthers bought them. And this is where you're going to get into the more kind of prototypical stock that you'll see with metal wheels. This is kind of like their showcase line. And so, yeah, these cars are definitely going to be up there in price. But again, not bad overall, in my opinion. I do have a few Walthers cars. Me personally, I always like the 2-axle coaches over the heavyweight 3-axles. It's just been a personal preference of mine. But yeah, you can see all the offerings from the Proto line of Walthers. Let's see what else we got here. So they've also got the Walthers track. Now, I'm not going to dive into this in this episode. We're going to have a whole another episode that we talk about track. But the Walthers track system is one of the two best out there right now that you can do for those serious modelers that want to get into either modulars or a personal home layout. But they've got some really, really good track offerings. The part of the Shinohara line as well. But easily, it's one of the two best. It's again, it's one of the great debates in the hobby. What is the best track to get? Me personally, Walthers is good, but usually the one that I go to is Pico. But again, we'll talk about track in a whole nother video. And yeah, that's a whole nother rabbit hole to get into. So, and then they have some Walthers controls. Some things they have in here are they do have the Walthers turnout machines. Again, a whole nother rabbit hole that you can go down for controlling your layout. Again, we'll kind of talk about layouts in a separate video. But they've got these brand new push buttons, which is pretty cool. They're kind of competing against Digitrax. They've got some other, here's those more switch machines here, and Tortoise adaptive boards here. That's pretty cool. But yeah, Walthers offers a plethora for the hobby, and it is a staple that more than likely, if you get into this hobby, you're going to run into a Walthers product sooner or later. So I definitely like Walthers, and I highly, highly recommend to check them out. So with it, guys, let me know what Walthers product you have purchased that you've had the best success with. What about some things that you weren't satisfied? But with it, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.